Hi there and welcome to another lockdown special edition of FC Cymru, where I have a series of cunning questions for you. What sort of person will run around a football pitch but not actually kick a ball? What sort of person will tolerate being shouted at by pretty much everyone? And what sort of person will make a decision knowing full well that at least 50% of everybody there watching or playing will completely disagree with them? Now, if you don't know the answer to these questions, then you are not a referee, and neither am I. So it got me thinking, who are these people? Where are they? What do they eat? All these very important questions. And to answer them, I've been speaking to JD Cymru Premier and international referee Ewan Griffiths. I've also been talking to Michelle Portelli and Paul Fisher. Now, they both referee in South Wales at lower league level. And I've been talking to English Premier League referee Anthony Taylor. Now, we won't hold that against him because he talks in great detail about shared experience and knowledge across the game at different levels among the refereeing fraternity. But I start with a gentleman called Phil Thomas. Now, he is the ref's ref at the FAW. He makes sure that every ref is as ref as that ref can be. So it seemed obvious that he should address the elephant in the room. Referees are, let's be honest, a strange breed. They are obviously those sort of people that deliberately liked to just be a bit obstinate at school. They were always that child. You became a referee. Why?
Yes, I think that that can be the sort of general perception, but I think that when you get to know referees personally, they have the same personality as football players, as coaches, and are genuinely in the game or refereeing for the love of the game, and to put something back into football where maybe they couldn't achieve out of playing or coaching, or see it as another avenue to succeed within the sort of footballing fraternity. Me personally, I started refereeing at the age of 23 due to the fact that I was a rubbish player. And I gained a few injuries, and at the time, my employer did not pay any sort of sick leave. I mean, I was very fortunate during my career to achieve nearly every accolade sort of within the domestic game, including all the National Cup finals. And again, fortunate enough to have spent 12 years as an international assistant referee, where I officiated on Champions League, Europa League, World Cup qualifiers, every UEFA competition that was possible. And I would never, ever have had that opportunity through playing football. What refereeing gave me with them life skills that are required in everyday life, in your working life, from sort of man management, dealing with confrontation. So it's certainly, I think refereeing most definitely gives you that sort of all-encompassing sort of life skills to help you in every aspect.
Well, it was a little bit of an accident. I wouldn't say a terrible accident, but it was an accident in how I got involved in refereeing. I was actually asked to attend the course that was running in my local area by the course instructor to make up the numbers. There was a course due to start. They didn't have many on it. So I was basically asked by the instructor to see if I would be interested in just going along to make up the numbers to make the course viable, really. And here I am 15 seasons later, still going.
Wow. And Michelle, then, what terrible crime did you commit?
I just think I love the game, whether it's been having a kick around in the park or coaching or officiating. I just fell in love with the game at a young age. I was mum for a year on the sideline after I finished coaching, and then I decided to get back into football, and I took the path of refereeing. Wasn't an easy decision. Watching park games or international games, you know the referee is always going to get a lot of slack, and I was brave enough to do it. Well, not so brave. I actually dragged my son to the referee course with me. Walked into the room, and it was scary being the only female in the room, but I wouldn't change it for the world now.
And Johan, then, because you're obviously so much further up the pathway, you must have been really, really bad at some point.
Well, funnily enough, it was a good friend of mine who's also on the international list in Wales now. He's an assistant referee on the Cymru Premier League. He was refereeing a kids' game in the village where we grew up near Carnarvon. And he didn't have anybody to run the line for him. So he asked me, obviously he had no experience of this, he asked me, would you mind running the line? I think it was an under-14s game. And I did it. And funnily enough, a course came up in the local area, a referee's course, a couple of weeks after. So I took that, and the rest is history, really.
Can you, Paul, let's go back to you. Can you remember the first time you crossed the whitewash as a referee, whistle in hand then? Can you remember what that felt like?
Yeah, actually, my first game, it was before really me becoming a full-time referee, I suppose, refereeing week in, week out. There was a game on Port Talbot Town's ground where Port Talbot Town's third team were playing Porthcall's third team in a Port Talbot League match, and there was no referee appointed to the game. So instead of one of the players or coaches having to step out into the middle, I had literally just done the course and took charge of that game on the ground now where Port Talbot Town play. That was my game.
And Michelle, do you remember your first time?
Yes, it was a under-14s girls competition. I was extremely nervous, and I think I made an awful decision with an offside. And the coaches weren't friendly at all. But Matt from the FAWales Girls League was extremely encouraging after the game, spoke to him via email, and he kept up my confidence to step back out on the pitch the week after.
Wow, well done for and thank heavens he was there for that to sort of prop you up and support you then. And Johan, there's no way you can remember your first time. I mean, it was so many games ago.
I can actually, funnily enough, but I was an assistant referee. I was too young to referee adults football then because I was only 14. And my first ever match as an assistant referee was Carnarvon Town Reserves versus Nevin United in the Gwynedd League, and that was actually played on the Oval, Carnarvon's ground. And I think my whole family came down to the ground that day and sort of packed the ground out. There was more members of my family there than spectators, I think. So, yeah, I've never forgotten that, really. I don't think you ever forget your first game and your first match because it's such a special moment. But like I said, that was back in 2003, 2004, so many, many years ago.
I mean, I don't want to labour on the negative side. We will get to the more positive stuff. But how big a shock was it when the first insults came in or the first abuse came in, either from a coach or a player or even from just somebody just walking the dog on the sidelines? And I mean, what sort of effect does that have straight off the bat?
As a young man at the time, it does affect you. But luckily enough, I had a mentor who came with me for my first couple of games. So at half-time, obviously you try and ignore it during the first half. At half-time, the mentor would come in and speak to you. And I think the coaches and players would also be aware that I was a young referee and they would not go in hard, They would be sensible. Obviously, you would have a couple who would overstep the mark, but then they had to be dealt with. And I think that's one stance I took early on as a referee, was I wasn't going to tolerate any nonsense, really. Regardless of my age, I was going to come down firm and hard. And I think it worked for me over the years because I must say I can probably count on one hand how many awful incidents I had as I was going through the leagues up in North Wales,
And Michelle, I mean, so you started with under-14s girls then. Was there even sort of a little bit of hostility there, or what sort of experiences have you had?
Not between the players. The players were very respectful. It was more coaches and parents, which you do tend to find with grassroots football. But since that first game, the way I obviously approached all the rest of the games that I officiated in, I've changed my stance, and I wasn't intimidated, and that's the main thing to obviously take forward from games like that. Last year I actually done a friendly for 2 local teams, which was very challenging, and again, men's team. Yeah, it was extremely challenging, and that was the kind of the game where I was either going to pack it in or continue with it. But because of the experience throughout the season before, it enabled me to obviously control that game and move forward. You're always going to get comments made by either players or managers or members of the public watching the game. And it's just about obviously you not reacting to the situation and just obviously controlling the game to your best ability.
And Paul, just to lay it to rest, then, who is worse? Is it coaches? Is it parents? Is it spectators? Then where are the biggest idiots?
I think it can come from anywhere really, but I think coaches have got a desire to win, and we all understand that, and unfortunately they do always step the mark at times. But I think, as you rightly said, if you don't put up with any nonsense and are firm on a game, then you get more respect from taking that stance than turning a blind eye to some bad behaviour. So I think I firmly believe in referees have got a big part to play in taking firm action, so everybody can enjoy the game really, whether it's a player, manager, coach, or a spectator.
I think early on as well, they see a young referee come on the pitch, some of the coaches, and they deliberately test you. So they try and push and push and push just to see whether or not you would react, and just to see how you would react. So my advice to all the young referees I work with is to give their personality over and to treat them as humans really, and not to take any nonsense, and to deal with it straight away, because these people do test you to see what kind of personality and whether you would crumble under pressure or whether you can deal with it. So the best way to deal with it, in my opinion, is to be firm, to be fair, and to use your personality and just treat them as humans really. And I think you'll get more respect by doing that than reacting in a different way.
Do any of you have refereeing heroes? So the people that you've seen officiating, you've gone, yeah, I could take something from their game, or I can, I appreciate their style or their personality or anything like that. And as any of you, I don't know, I'm not saying if any of you got like a ref pinned up on your wall sort of thing, but somebody that's either the way that they manage the game, or anything that you've picked up from the way that they go about it. Michelle, can we start with you on that?
I think it'd have to be Cheryl Foster. Obviously, she's made the transition from being a player to a referee. She's excellent at officiating. I went and watched her officiate the Barry Town game back last season. Well, this season, I should say. I'm still thinking we've finished now. And I do look up to her. She's really helpful as well. I've met her at the female conference as well, and I just appreciate all her input and guidance that she provides.
And how important is it to you? It sounds like a stupid question, but how important is it to you that there is a female official at that sort of level that you can A, learn from, but B, also see that there's a pathway for women to get to that sort of stage as well?
Well, it's just brilliant. Obviously, listening to Cheryl's story, it's just inspirational. And I just think, obviously, for younger referees, especially female referees, having somebody like Cheryl there, then there is a pathway, and you've got the opportunity to obviously get your UEFA badges and stuff. So it's just brilliant having Cheryl up there and representing women. How
complicated is the game? Now, I'm specifically saying because, obviously I watch football, everything from international down to grassroots, and I know that I do not understand the whole rules of the I believe they're called laws. Is that right, Johan? Is it laws?
Correct.
Okay, good, excellent. So there are, obviously so many laws there. So, how complicated actually is football, Paul?
Personally, I think it's quite simple. We do have to make far more non-decisions in a match than we actually make decisions. So when we are out there in the middle, we're thinking, you only concentrate on the decisions we make, but we make far more non-decisions in a game than actual decisions that you will probably comment on. So it is. You do need to think on your feet when you're refereeing, but really, if you think about it, it is a quite simple game. Sometimes the interpretation of the laws, like particularly offside, probably is the biggest one, which is changed in the last couple of seasons. But I personally, I think it's quite a simple game. But unfortunately, some people analyse and perhaps make it more complicated than it actually is.
Johan, you're dealing with top level players then, but from chats that I've had, the one thing that always seems to come back is how little they know about the actual rules of the game, though. So how often are you effectively teaching on the pitch?
Yeah, you do sometimes become a teacher, but I think steps have been progressing over the years where the FAW have been working specifically with clubs before the season. So they would go into the clubs and explain if there's any new law change, then that would be explained to the clubs and then they would be filtered down, hopefully, to the players. I mean, Paul mentioned interpretation, and I think that's what certain players sometimes struggle with, is how you as a referee have interpreted that foul A was a foul, and 5 minutes later something similar, in their opinion, happened, and he didn't think it was a foul. So as long as you can explain yourself and sound convincing to the players, most of them will generally accept your explanation and move on. Consistency is so important across the board, and it's something we work very, very hard on before the season and during the season, where we have our meetings every 2 or 3 months. We come together as a group, and what we do is we basically watch clips from the Welsh Premier League or the Cymru Premier League, and then we have an open discussion, and then we should say, if that happens again as a group, this is what we should do, or if this situation occurs, this is the best way to deal with it. So if everyone's on board, then hopefully if that sort of situation happens again, the outcome is going to be the same.
So Phil, you now look for and you train and develop the next generation of referees, and you take them on the pathway from grassroots up to, you know, even international level. Then the people that want to join these courses, then, I mean, what sort of stories do they have? What sort of reasons? Are they just completely, you know, is it a huge broad range of people?
Oh, absolutely. It's a massive broad range of people that are attracted into refereeing. You know, I think as sort of time moves on, we are getting a lot more younger recruits, where previously it would be predominantly people who have maybe played the game and then decide they want to put something back into football or remain in football. The pendulum is swinging now more towards the younger recruits coming on board. We still get in, obviously, the ex-players, and the balance there at the moment is right between sort of youth and experience as well within refereeing. But we are, you know, I mean, there's definitely a broad range of people who take up the course.
So Simon, then this is kind of where you come into the equation then with eCoach. Just, I mean, let's start with the basics. Tell us about eCoach and about your platform.
Yeah, well, eCoach, an online learning solutions provider with a sort of niche approach to creating online courses and learning management systems for sports organizations. And we started working with the FAW back in 2016, and we launched globally the first online referee recruitment tool in 2017 with Phil's predecessor, Ray Ellingham, and then Phil came on board as well. And it's really gone from strength to strength. And Phil there was mentioning the pandemic, and we've seen nearly 300 new referees come on board since the beginning of April, which is an incredible amount when you consider that before the FAW took the training online, they were getting around 100, 110 referees going through the system each year. So that's what we do. We just sort of basically help sports organizations and other organizations too, just to take their training online and ensure that, you know, it's high quality stuff as much as anything else.
And how have you and Phil worked together then to make sure that, you know, it works the way that Phil needs it to, that referees understand, that they can interpret then, because it's, you know, it's incredibly nuanced sort of stuff that they're talking about in the processes. So how difficult has it been to match up to the requirements that the FAW had?
Well, it is tricky, but I think what a lot of organizations are scared of when we talk about online learning is the fact that you're going to take everything from the classroom and the pitch and put it all online. But actually, the real secret to success is using both approaches, and that's what we did with the FAW. So if you think about it, over the old FAW course for potential referees, it was 6 weeks in the classroom, and then you'd have a face-to-face session at the end. But actually, the 6 week stuff you're doing in the classroom, you can do online, because it's watching videos and it's looking at the laws, which are the same all around the world, aren't they? So what you're doing is you're taking those referees who are really skilled and knowledgeable about the game, and you take them out of the classroom where they don't always feel 100% sort of relaxed and comfortable training, and you put them on the pitch, and then you put the classroom stuff online, because the laws of the game are the laws of the game. And it's all about the context you give. It's the video clips you use, it's the interactions and the engagement, the quizzes that you use to make sure that people have that knowledge and do have that kind of understanding. And I think people really enjoy that because they can go at their own pace. You know, they can do it around their families. So if they've got to put the kids to bed, they can press pause or they can press stop, and they can come back an hour and a half later with a cup of tea and finish off the course. They can resume where they left off, and they don't need to drive 40 minutes every Tuesday night to watch videos on a whiteboard, which is, you know, generally what happens anyway. So it's about using both. So you've got the great online platform where people can do everything at their own pace, and then you've got Phil and his team answering questions and going into the subtleties of refereeing on a football pitch somewhere as well. So it works perfectly that way.
So Phil, from your point of view then, this has opened up avenues to a certain extent.
Yeah, absolutely, Alex. You know, from our perspective, what we found with the classroom courses is that they were obviously rigid and didn't offer the candidate any flexibility. So what we find now is with online learning, and you know, you've got a set sort of time frame to complete the online element before the practical course, that the learner can actually, you know, can dip in and out of the course at their leisure. So it completely gives that flexibility. And I think that, you know, in 2020 now, the way lives are and the way sort of working life is, surely for a lot of people, to ask somebody to attend a classroom session for 6 weeks on at the same time, I think that the online course is definitely far more attractive from that perspective. Plus, I mean, the online course is really interactive as well. So what you haven't got there is not just literally sort of 8 to 10 hours of PowerPoint sort of explaining the laws of the game. It goes into depth. There's probably at least 20 to 30% of the content is video clips, which explains decisions and sort of explains the criteria behind decisions. So we feel that the candidate, I mean, going into the practical course, which we hold after the online learning, are already sort of in tune with what is required for that sort of refereeing journey when they step onto the field of play.
But there is another course online as well, and that's it's just a sort of mini course, as it were, just to get a bit of a taste for refereeing. So it's for people who maybe are asked to go off and referee their kids' football on a Saturday, but they've never had any training whatsoever. And basically, the only knowledge they have around refereeing is from when they played or when they watch Match of the Day. Yet we expect thousands of parents and coaches to be refereeing thousands of games every weekend, which is kind of mad when you think about it. So
I'm one of those. I am one of those. And we've had that, you know, we sort of on a Saturday morning with the boy, and it's like, right, who wants to ref? And everybody's kind of looking at their shoes, and we pass it around, and it is literally like that. We're sort of looking at each other going,
is that right?
Is that right? Is that a rule? I don't.
I had to referee my winkle pickers once. So I was going shopping after I took my son to play football. I had winkle pickers and a pair of tight jeans on. And I had to take the middle, and that was even worse, but especially when you haven't got the confidence and knowledge. But that course in itself is all online, because we understand that actually, if you just want to taste for refereeing, you probably don't want to go somewhere and have long discussions with referees. So you want to just do something nice and quickly online, see if you like it, get upscale to a point where you can referee a youth game with confidence, you know, and deal with it that way. So yeah, it's a completely mixed approach, and online learning always will be. And throwing into the mix now, the fact that everyone uses Zoom and Teams so often, that becomes part of online learning as well. And face-to-face becomes maybe talking to someone like we're talking at the moment.
Recruitment is pivotal in refereeing. Retention is obviously just as important. So we ensure that, I mean, all referees in Wales receive the support required, really, to sort of help them, to help nurture them, and to aid them with their refereeing careers. So the first thing we do when a referee passes their qualification is we will put them in touch with a local area association, and then their local area association then will provide them with a relevant training and education and mentoring, which is important, to ensure that we retain them in the game and they feel valued and that they are obviously playing a pivotal role in football in Wales. And I think that is what is really important.
I mean, you talk about mentoring there. When I hear somebody talk about refereeing mentoring, what I'm actually hearing is support group. Just because,
Absolutely.
yes, just because, you can teach the laws, you could teach processes, you could teach interpretation. How do you teach abuse or dealing with abuse? How do you teach being the only person on the pitch who everybody is united in thinking is wrong at all times? At least 50% of people on that pitch, or watching that game, will always know that, regardless of what decision, that they don't agree with it.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a difficult one, Alex. And that is one actual aspect that we've built into our referee leaders award, where we've got some sort of questions in there of how you would deal with different scenarios, which hopefully helps the referee then when it comes to them situations. But that is the whole sort of idea of the mentoring system that we have within Wales, where their mentors are there. As you rightly say, Alex, the main focus is on support, advice, guidance in situations that they've probably never dealt with before in life, let alone on the football field. So it's about sort of preparing them for every eventuality on the field of play, and obviously external from the field of play as well. So they are sort of well equipped to be able to deal with them situations should they arise, as difficult as they are at the time.
The actual reason I started taking it was because my mum. Every weekend, me and a small group of friends, we used to go and watch our hometown team, Altrincham, still playing the National League now. And she was sick of me coming home on a Saturday night whining about referees, how rubbish referees were, how they'd cost Altrincham the game and all this kind of stuff. And she effectively told me to either go and give it a try or shut up, basically. And that's what started it all. And obviously I was still at school then. One of the real tangible benefits, I think, that you notice, particularly from younger people who decide to take up the whistle, it either supplements them playing football, so getting a bit more of an understanding from a different perspective of the game in terms of the laws and things like that. But equally, it's really good at developing a young person's confidence and decision-making ability, and they're obviously transferable skills that move into any walk of life as you go through from school into your first job and beyond. So it's not always some really sad, lonely people who can't play football and don't have any mates, and that's what we're going to do all weekend. There are some real serious, positive things that can come from becoming involved in refereeing.
When you're looking at a particular incident, what is going through your head in terms of applying the laws of the game, in terms of applying interpretation?
The real underlying key factor here is when a player or a manager asks you why you've made a decision, and this is something that we try and impress on aspiring officials coming through, you've got to be able to try and explain why you've made that decision. Interpretation will always be subjective because everybody has slightly different opinions, and that is part of the beauty of football. But what we can try and do as a group of officials is to try and get people to understand a little bit more some of the factors that we are trying to interpret as part of that process when we make those decisions on the field. But when Phil asked me to come and do some work with the panel of assistants and the referees for the League of Wales, it's something that I don't really hesitate in saying yes to, because what I do think is, particularly for those of us who are so lucky to reach the very top of the game, we almost have a an obligation to put something back in. You know, whether that be in our own country or another country, it doesn't really matter. Because at the end of the day, referees are just like players and coaches. Everybody wants to be successful and everybody wants to be involved in the top games. And if that's if sharing some experiences help a couple of the guys or the ladies on the League of Wales become better, because that's what it's ultimately about, always looking to get better and improve, then I'm more than happy to do that. And again, referees aren't as miserable and sad as people think sometimes. You know, the
well, I've always thought you must have a sense of humour.
Well, yeah.
Nobody does that job doesn't have a sense of humour. I've always considered that.
The levels of interaction and the willingness to get better is highlight people.
I suppose there is an expression that you play the game and not the occasion, but there must be some occasions where the butterflies are there more than others, where you're thinking, this is going to be amazing.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like any elite sport, though. You've got to try and harness that and turn that into a positive. So I'm not just thinking about myself when I'm doing it, a particular game. I'm thinking about all my team that are there with me, you know. And so it's important to me that the assistants and the fourth official who are working on a game with me are relaxed and in the best possible frame of mind, because otherwise they're not going to perform to the best for me. And so probably that distracts a little bit from any nerves that I have got, but any nerves I do experience are in a positive way. I'm not kind of sat there in a corner cowering, shaking, going, I don't want to do this. It's like, right, come on. It's a buzz. It's the one thing that I can't explain to people properly, is the actual buzz that you get. So if you could bottle the feeling that you get stood just in the tunnel just before you walk out in front of 70,000, 80,000 people on big games, it'd be fantastic to be able to share that experience with people. I mean, it would make your hair stand on end, but just on the back of me neck here, but
the eyebrows.
But it's really difficult to explain what that kind of feeling is. Just like a player would say about scoring a hat-trick at Wembley or something along those lines. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a great feeling to be involved.
I think obviously, you know, being a good referee is all about the communication in the changing rooms before the game. The referee will obviously let you know what they expect of you for the game. Keeping up with the game is really important, so that, you know, your view of the game, your opinion, your calls on the game, they're not being judged then. If you're obviously not in the right position, then people are going to question your ability to make that judgment. Just making sure you have the referees back and you're there and you're in the position to obviously make that call, and being prepared to obviously call for anything that needs to be raised.
And Paul, how often do referees disagree? Or referees and their assistants disagree?
Yeah, in a game situation, you know, if you go back to the point that Michelle made, you know, if you're giving your assistants clear instructions and you've worked with people previously, you know, you shouldn't really be disagreeing on things and working together. You know, you get to know each other. You become telepathic when you work together for so many times. You know, you almost expect what your assistant is going to give you when they expect the decision. You know, that the referee is going to make, but also before the game you've planned, you know, where you expect an assistant to get involved, where you wouldn't expect them to become involved. So you know, a lot of planning goes into that. So you shouldn't have referees and assistants really, you know, crossing each other or making completely opposite decisions.
Johan, I can feel you sort of hovering over around that point there.
Yeah, I mean, Paul's nailed it really. It's all about communication to your assistants before the game. I mean, at Cymru Premier level, you sometimes work with the same assistants, so they become to understand how you work on the field, and then you understand how they work. So it's sort of understanding each other, and like Paul said, he split the pitch into different zones, so the assistant would know where to come in, or where I would want their input and where I wouldn't want their input. I mean, it's inevitable you're going to disagree on a decision, but it's about getting to the right decision at the end. That's the main thing, really. And if the area of the field, if the assistant has got a better angle, then you would tend to go with whatever they've seen if you're in a poor position, for example. So it's all about communication and what you communicate to the assistants before the game in your instructions.
If there was a message that as a referee you'd like to say as a referee to players, coaches, supporters, just to help them to understand a little bit more about your role or where you're coming from, or what would that message be?
I think it would do everybody good if players, managers, spectators took a little bit of time just to learn a little bit about the laws of the game. So when they are having a bit of a pop at us when we're out in the middle making decisions, they've got a little bit of understanding. We don't expect managers, players, spectators to become experts overnight, but I think just take a little bit of time to learn the laws. I think it would probably make it in experiences of football more enjoyable if they could actually understand why a referee has made a decision which has ultimately affected a match. So that's one thing I would like to see, is that just learn a little bit. You don't have to learn the laws of the game inside out. Just learn a little bit to take away, and just perhaps it'll help their understanding of the game.
Michelle?
Yeah, I think what Paul said is definitely on spot. But I would just say, just enjoy the game. Let the referee do their job and just watch the game, enjoy it, and hopefully everyone will have a good game.
I think I'd encourage people, now they have more time on their hands because we're still in lockdown, just to go on the website and to give the course a go. I mean, there's been such a shift now from the classroom-based course. It's all online now, so you can do it in your own time, become a ref. So I would encourage people, go on the Become a Ref website, give the course a go, and I can guarantee you that you'll learn so much about football. I think that's going to enhance your experience, whether or not you want to take up refereeing or not. I think it's going to enhance your experience by watching a game, because you'll know more of what's going on, or you'll know how the referee's thinking when he's making a decision. The experiences I've had from refereeing has been unbelievable. The countries I've visited, the friends I've made, the contacts I've made, they're worldwide, and especially in Wales, there's such a close bond between the Cymru Premier League referees. It's quite special. So it's the best thing I've probably ever done in my life, to be honest, was going on the course 16 years ago.
Michelle, what have you got out of it? What has it taught you?
Just not to be afraid of making the wrong decision, and just making sure you learn from it if you do make the wrong decision, and just being confident and being assertive. Because football is a fast-paced environment, you've got to have good decision-making skills, and it's just being confident really whilst you're on that pitch, and being consistent.
I think it's understanding and realising that, by you being on top of your game and putting in a good performance, you can actually make, a good game into a really, really good game for people watching. So, you can, when you play a great advantage and a goal is scored from it, that's you contributing to, a game which everybody enjoys and loves watching. So, that's the best part of it, is being part of a great game that everybody goes home and talks about for the right reasons.
And there we are then, inside the mind of a referee or referees. And what do we take from this? I mean, well, first of all, it turns out that they are quite normal people, contrary to all acceptable evidence. And they also have to look at the game in a completely different way to the rest of us. And we never really take into account the decisions that they are making and why they're making, or even the decisions that they're not making. And also there's a really, really strong bond, a camaraderie between all these referees, because they are supporting each other all the time, and they're always trying to improve and share their knowledge and experiences at all levels. I think that's brilliant as well. If you had been tempted to dip your toe into refereedom, then you're in luck. Because FAWales is the place for you to go to learn all about the various different courses on offer, many of which you can do online. That is it then for this edition of FC Cymru. As ever, if you want to reach out and get in touch with us, then details at the bottom of the screen. But until next time, take care and ta-da.